all the other persons apart from the main panelists, I would request all of you to keep your microphones on mute and your videos turned off for better audio and visual experience. When one speaker is speaking, I would request all others to keep their microphones on mute. There's a group chat option in the taskbar of the app in case you want to raise a specific query for a certain panelist. So we would recommend that you use that to type in all your queries. We also have a dedicated time towards the end for group discussion. So there we'll be taking all your comments and suggestions. With those few announcements, let me now welcome our Secretary, Shri Sanjay Bhattacharya, JSOIA 1 and CEO, Shri Abbagani Ramu, PGE, Shri Yogesh Kuswan, our distinguished panel moderated by Professor Neeta N. Pillai from CWDS, MEA officers, colleagues and friends. We'll now begin the panel discussion. I'll now request Secretary Sir to make his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Surabhi. I must say that this new initiative of ICM to organize these seminars and to get such a talented and experienced set of panelists is a very welcome one. I also take this opportunity to welcome Sri Ramu Abbagani, who has joined as JSOIA1 and will also be spearheading ICM to the fraternity. Good afternoon to you all. There is no doubt that there is much more scope for dialogue on the broader issue of emigration of women workers from India. Given the very tremendous pool of talent that we have within the country, I feel that this area is still somewhat under-leveraged. The recognition of women workers as independent economic units doing real work can truly alter the discourse on growth and development. And similarly, women can emerge as a force in migration flows and also in terms of the kind of economic returns that they can get. Is there somebody on the panel who is also talking? Today's panel, however, is focused on the case of female domestic workers. I hope that the discussions will cover the issues and challenges pertaining to legal, regulatory, and social factors, welfare and protection measures, skilling, best practices, mobility agreements, and the fact that women domestic workers actually do real work and therefore deserve real compensations. We've noticed that in recent years there has been a considerable growth of these women domestic workers, primarily to the GCC and Southeast Asia. In 2019 itself, we had registered 1,069 such workers from India who were given immigration clearance in the eMigrate portal. But actually the numbers are way higher than what is projected. At the policy level, India's efforts have focused on combating a range of domestic, regional, and transnational challenges in the area of women's migration. Governance and regulation in this sphere have been a priority. We have seen many domestic workers go to the Gulf on a tourist visa or on a family visit visa, and they have subsequently taken employment over there. Measures have also been adopted to not only prevent irregular migration, but also to protect the interests of overseas women workers. At the bilateral level, the Ministry of External Affairs has signed a separate memorandum of understanding or agreements on domestic workers or related to domestic workers with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, and there is currently an expression of interest by Qatar. Women domestic workers may be vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. Certain measures such as registration, awareness campaigns, guarantees that the recruiting agencies have to undertake were thus built into India's legal and policy framework of immigration. The approach towards women's migration therefore sought not only to prevent exploitation and abuse of domestic workers, but also to support their safe and legal migration. In fact, these outcomes are very inextricably linked. Today, we need new perspectives to better govern the migration of women as domestic workers. Illegal and irregular migration make women susceptible to exploitation. Indian embassies in destination countries are having to play a key role in taking up the matters of workplace harassment and abuse with local employers and local authorities. We have taken this on as a very special task. In some cases, we have even had to set up shelter homes, for instance, in Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, and Malaysia for Indian women in distress. We have the grievance portal, Madat, as well as helplines, which provide a very important role in this regard in trying to access the people who have such problems. It is very important to have a speedy resolution of these issues and to provide support through the ICWF or the Indian Community Welfare Fund. And that's a big priority for us. We have also seen that the migration of domestic workers should also be an opportunity for skilling. Rapidly aging populations in several countries has given rise to the demand for care workers for the sick and elderly, or for au pairs to look after children in some cases. And in these, we find that skilling and certification can lead to possibilities of higher wages and more secure and enhanced career prospects. Skill and vocational training for domestic workers is also important as the work is diversifying and there is more specialization that is coming in. The Skill Development Council of the NSDC and the Domestic Workers Council have developed certain occupational standards and is engaged in training and certification of domestic workers as per the skill levels that they are required to have. Once again, I would like to say that CM's role as a think tank on such issues pertaining to international migration has been extremely significant in this regard. Previously, ICM, in partnership with UN Women, had prepared a handbook for women domestic workers. This handbook has now been updated and will be relaunched to provide the latest regulations and the living conditions abroad. Finally, let me congratulate the ICM for organizing these seminars on topics which have great relevance and have policy implications. The eminent panel that you brought together for this session will undoubtedly contribute to a better understanding of the issues, challenges, and also suggest practical steps forward. I look forward to the discussions that will follow. Thank you very much, Surabhi, for having me on the panel this time.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Professor Pillai, to carry over the proceedings. Can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself, please, Professor Pillai? Is it working? It's not working.
Is it fine now?
Yes.
Can you hear?
Yes. Now we can
I
hear
think
you.
someone must have muted me, and
Yes.
I was unable to unmute. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me begin by congratulating the India Center for Migration for holding this discussion on international migration and domestic workers, especially in the month of June, when we have already celebrated International Domestic Workers Day on June 16th. Domestic work is one of my area of work, but I have mostly worked on internal migration. Unlike internal migration is much more complex, given that the destinations are different countries with specific social and cultural context, and also because the legal regime is very different in different destinations. To just say a few words about women's migration, female migration. Though we have some understanding on female immigration in this context, we actually normally tend to think that women are add-ons to a better understanding of immigration or migration for work. And in this context, I think it's important for us to look at this issue and in the context of domestic work, because we know these are systems where you have highly feminized workforce. So if you look at India as a state's approach to immigration as a sending country, it is largely paternalistic. It could be maybe a part of the social and cultural context that is prevalent in our situation. Women are always considered to be, needing protection. So we have restrictions on. There has been some changes in the specificity of these policies. But if you look at the realities, many of these policies actually doesn't match because women are migrating for work, mostly bypassing some of the industries. The problem is that then we are left with enough to understand female immigration for work. So we also are now with the whole question of illegality and the resultant vulnerability of women workers, especially, as I said, there are sectors that women are concentrated like domestic. So I'm eminent panelists that we have today who are from varied backgrounds will definitely bring in some of these issues and to the multiple dimensions that we require for any deliberation and discussion on this issue. Understanding of these issues and implications are actually very important for any policy intervention, and I hope some of the panelists will also come up with some of the recommendations in terms of what has to be done and also specific to different stakeholders. So I look forward to the discussion, and what I will do is I will request the panelists, 4 of you are there, so I will request all of you to limit your intervention to 10 to 11 minutes so that we can manage the time, and so that then we come back to the questions after the panelists have made their intervention. So I'll start with Professor Praveena Kodot. Just to introduce Praveena, she is a professor at the Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, and she has a specialization in gender studies. She has extensively worked on international migration, women workers, and also on other issues of women relating to higher education, citizenship, gender and relation, political economy of dowry in Kerala, and transformation of family and marriage in Kerala. So, Praveena, can you start with your intervention now?
Thank you, Nita, and thank you to the ICM and Surabhi for extending this invitation to me to speak about women domestic workers who migrate to the Middle East. As Surabhi requested, I will first focus on some of the trends in this migration, trends and patterns, and then I will examine the gap between women's perspectives, women migrants, which do not somehow, which are not aligned. Could you all see me?
Mr. Jain, can you mute your mic? Sorry. Mr. R.K. Jain, can you mute your mic?
So request all of you to mute your mic, otherwise we can't hear this panelist.
Yes. Sorry, Praveena, for the interruption. You can resume.
That's okay. It always happens. Okay. So regarding the migration data, as has already been flagged by the Secretary in his introductory remarks, there is a large gap in the sense that the database is rather weak because of the extent of irregular migration. Therefore, if we look at the immigration check required statistics, that doesn't really give us a very good idea of the numbers of women who are actually going overseas in this category. And that is the ECR category, which refers to people who have less than 10 years of education. And most domestic actually go overseas in this particular category. But then when we, the number going through the also responds to the level of regulation. So when regulation in India gets very stringent, the numbers reduce. But that doesn't really mean that women going reduce. Now, when we turn to the destination sources, we have data on stock in the destination. We find that there is a
Can't hear you, Praveena. Surabhi, I think there is a problem.
Yeah, maybe we lost her for, I don't see her connected.
Madam, there was a disconnect in the internet from Bangalore office as well. We logged in, maybe we'll wait for it.
Let's wait for a moment. If she doesn't come back, then we move to Nishtha and then we can get her back. Yeah.
I think that is what is possible now. Maybe we should start with Nishtha, Satyam.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Yeah. So we'll come back to Praveena. So we have the next speaker, next panelist, Nishtha Satyam. She is the Deputy Country Representative for UN Women since January 2018, and she is the youngest, I think, the Deputy Country Director Representative that we had all this while. She was formerly engaged in strategic partnerships, policy impact, and public relations for the UN Women Multi-Country Office for India, Bhutan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. Over to Nishtha.
Thanks, Neeta. I'm going to not take 10 minutes because the network is slightly patchy, I guess. So just to keep everybody engaged, I've already been introduced. I'd also like to just apologize upfrontly because I will have to leave midway in this discussion, so I may not have the chance to say bye to all of you because I have an urgent commitment with the ministry which I didn't see up until right now when I looked up into my WhatsApp. But nevertheless, this is a very important topic for us, Neeta, and thank you for bringing us in. It's important for us to know why we're talking about what we're talking about, and the reason this is important is of course from a human rights perspective, but also the sheer numbers that govern the international normative commitment that India has. We're talking about 90 million number of domestic workers in India, 12.6 million of them who are underage, 86% of them who are girls, and 25% of them who do flout the anti-child labor laws because they're below 14 years of age. In fact, the ILO 2016 estimate is that 1 in every 25 women workers worldwide is a domestic worker. It's important that when we're talking about a constituency that we all have the chance to experience in our own homes, in our own lives, they don't quite seem to be talked about, particularly in an environment like the current pandemic that we have. And we know that there have been certain issues that have always plagued the constituencies. If you look at the National Crime Record Bureau data, it tells us that the number of reported cases of violence against domestic workers has gone up from 3,400 in 2010 to 3,550 in 2012. Beyond which we don't have that data, but probably it would be safe enough to see that there. Now, not that all increase in all reporting must be seen negatively, but what we essentially know is that definitely the issue of violence is a very live issue. We also know that while some states have passed the minimum wage laws pertaining to domestic work, only 1 or 2 states have institutionalized the workforce with a union, a special identity card, and social security scheme. And like you said, at the heart of these issues, it lies the vulnerability of the woman, particularly in a very classist and misogynistic environment. I mean, just to reiterate, just to give you an example of why I think it's both classist and misogynistic, is there was an advertisement campaign maybe 2 years back with a very infamous tagline which said, diamonds are useless, gift your wife a maid. So the UN also recognizes as a contemporary form of slavery, and therefore just the sheer confluence of numbers, the gravity of the issue, combined with, of course, the issues of not just gender but caste, class, make it a very complex issue that deserves our very urgent attention. Now, I know that a lot of others on the panel will have a lot of statistics to share, but we have to know, just to put into perspective what we are dealing with. Domestic work is the primary source of employment of women in the unorganized sector, of which less than 1% of the workforce is formally trained, and about 80-85% actually fall under the category of unskilled workers. Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities, we know, have the highest demand for domestic help. So as much as, the constituency is clearly linked to growing disposable income, it is a constituency that has been left very, very behind. The challenges that I think, let me quickly, I think we've spoken about the challenges quite a bit, but I think the first big challenge would be data. And I think there needs to be concrete investment in analyzing the trends of domestic workers' migration from India. We already know that 73% of the female workforce is illiterate or educated only up to the primary level. Now, when you compound this, there is a serious need for a ecosystem to be set up for data collection. The second, of course, is the recruitment challenges that we've had with respect to migrant data workers, domestic workers. We know that they provide indispensable services to the countries that they go, almost contributing to the wealth of aging societies and the sustainability. Yet, as with other migrant workers, they're confronted with great violations of the human and labor rights. Passports, contract substitution charges, that charges excessive fees, absence of adapted assistance and protection mechanisms. So these are some of the challenges that we know that exist with respect to the recruitment. So one thing that I think UN Women has constantly been recommending is benchmarking of best practices from different origin countries for enhanced protection of domestic workers. For example, in Singapore, employers are required to apply for a work permit if they wish to hire a foreign domestic worker. The work permit is usually valid for 2 years, and employers mostly take care of benefits such as, weekly rest day, accommodation, medical care, and insurance. So maybe it would be, I know we've already produced the handbook, but maybe as a continued effort, it would make a lot of sense to invest in understanding best practices from other countries, from other countries to identify what our negotiation terms can be. The second, of course, is lending voice to these workers themselves and formalizing their identity. I think, for us, when we work with the domestic workers, their identity usually becomes a huge gap. We know that a group of domestic workers had gathered in Jaipur on 25th of May to negotiate how to negotiate for their unpaid salaries during the lockdown period, and therefore agreeing to return to the previous jobs. So what we essentially see that unionization or lending identity, legal as it may be, really helps in negotiations at tough circumstances. And we've had that experience from several constituencies, but we truly believe that lending this is going to be an important pivot in our journey to achieving rights for domestic workers. Just to give you an example, these women were actually members of the Rajasthan Mahila Kamgar Union, which is a 10-year-old organization that has played a very pivotal role in assisting domestic workers to combat distress. And now, when we saw the lockdown, we saw that their negotiation power, the bargaining power, was much higher as a collective. So I think the original strategies of mobilization, organization, and collectivization need to come back. While we find a way to give them identity through cards, to understand more about their identity with data, and of course to invest in ensuring that we incorporate best practices. We are actually working already on a study to see the impact of COVID on domestic workers, not just domestic workers, but basically unorganized sector workers, or which domestic workers will be a part. And as and when we go through there, we will be more than happy to share the data that we have. But the only thing that I want to end with is that women migrant workers' remittances account for almost half of all global remittances, and are usually used to meet what we call well-being expenditure, educational, health, livelihood needs of families and communities. These remittances often act as a substitute for a lack of social protection in countries with limited public welfare systems. So we're indeed talking about a very important constituencies, not just from a human rights perspective, but also to the economy and to the states that they support and help sustainability with. And I think with major economist institutions warning that the current pandemic could lead to a global recession, I think we are almost should be predicting widening gender inequalities that is likely to leave women behind in a situation like this. So I think we will need, like I said, just to repeat, at the risk of repeating myself, come up with intentional strategies to mobilize, collectivize, and organize while we work on identity and we work on international best practices and stronger negotiations through international cooperation. I'm just going to end there, but those were my brief remarks.
Thank you, Nishtha. I think Praveena is back. So can I request Praveena to start? Is Praveena around?
Yes, she is around. Praveena, you can resume. I think we lost you in between.
Thank you, Nita, and I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know what happened. I just went off the air. Felt that I had been disconnected with technology. Continue from where I stopped. Oman has, according to destination sources, the Omani official sources, about 50,000 women domestic workers. Saudi Arabia media sources put the number at 50,000, and the UAE, Bahrain, etc. too have a fairly large number of domestic workers. In total, in the Middle East, there is upwards of about 2 lakhs of women domestic workers, and this is undercounting because they're not counting visit visas and company visas. Therefore, the ECR statistics clearly is out of depth in terms of enumerating women who go overseas. Now, and of course, we know that there are substantial irregular flows. Now, if we turn to the patterns, where do they go from and which are the destinations? There are very clear patterns that emerged from a study that I did prior to the regulation becoming very stringent with the ban on private recruiters in 2016. So my survey was conducted over 2013 and 14 in 4 source areas, 4 clusters, spatial clusters of women's migration in this category. They were Trivandrum, Malappuram in Kerala, and East Godavari and Kadapa in Andhra Pradesh. Now, what I found was that Kuwait was the single largest destination of women over a fairly long period of time from East Godavari and Trivandrum and Kadapa. And in fact, in my survey, over 70% of the journeys of women from Kadapa were to Kuwait. The UAE was the single largest destination from Malappuram, which kind of tallies with the importance of Dubai and the UAE in the Malabar region of Kerala. Interestingly, Saudi Arabia came second as the second largest sending destination country from Kadapa and Malappuram, and both have significant proportions of Muslims in their population. So there was a religious connection in the flows to Saudi Arabia. Oman came second in terms of the destination country, the major destination country. I will mention one more thing about the patterns. Trivandrum and East Godavari had the most diverse kind of destinations. So though Kuwait was the largest single destination from Trivandrum, only 35% of women's journeys were to Kuwait. Trivandrum had a very diverse set of destinations, not just the Middle East. Women were also going to Israel. Both East Godavari and Trivandrum women, a very large number of women actually go as care workers to Israel. where elder care and childcare workers, the employer needs to get a license, but you can legally go and work, and the salaries are much, much higher. So there is demand, and women have been tapping into this demand. Of course, my survey did not include destinations in the West, but from Trivandrum, there were women who were going as care workers to Italy prominently, but also to other destinations like London, Australia, Canada. Most of this was irregular flows, but women were certainly going. Now, I will not go into why these kind of patterns, but there are very clear social network related reasons for the kind of patterns that we find, and these are historical connections, but if there are questions later on, I can answer them. Coming to the gap between India's migration policy with respect to the ECR category of women and women's perspectives, which I said in the beginning do not tally, it's important to note that India's policy is based largely on unverified assumptions. It's driven by highly emotive reportage of the abuse of workers in the Middle East. There is no denying the fact that there is harassment and abuse, but that is across the board, and that's a systemic problem in the Middle East. Now, if you look at the experiences of workers, their experiences are very diverse, extremely varied. A single woman has different experiences over the course of her migration trajectory. She may have had an experience of abuse, but she continues to go because she knows of other women who've had better experiences. And she has better experiences also. Similarly, a woman who's had a good experience may have a bad experience on a second or a third journey when she goes to a new job. So there is a great diversity of experience, and policy must really look at the wider spectrum when it is formulated, and not only at the experiences of one segment, because that doesn't address the concerns of workers, because the workers are interested in going overseas and gaining the benefits of the higher salaries that are on offer there. Another factor that drives Indian state policy, a kind of the demonization of private intermediaries. Now, private intermediaries are seen as the principal agents of harassment and exploitation of women. And like women's experiences, private intermediaries are also very diverse. There is no denying that virtually all private intermediaries engage in some level of exploitation, because they used to charge some amount of money for women to go overseas, though according to the rules in the Middle East, women were not supposed to be charged. And yet you find that when women are in trouble, the people who actually assist them and help them to find jobs, help them to find, negotiate with their employers, get them their salaries, etc., are these recruiting agents. And they're not, for most part, women migrant workers go through irregular recruiters. They do not go through the licensed agencies. Of course, in 2016, all private intermediation, including going through one's own social networks, was barred, and women can only go through public sector, stipulated public sector agencies, and of course, direct through the e-migrate on payment of $2,500 by the foreign employer, which is very rarely ever used, because you can get private intermediaries to actually get you a woman over there in the Gulf. Now, the problem with this is that it doesn't really work for women. Now, what happens is that the public sector recruiting agencies have not been in the business hitherto. It's only in 2018 that NORCA began recruiting, and we have a NORCA official here who will tell you about their experience. But the problem is that the public sector agencies have very little outreach to the source areas of migration. They do not have the connections, the networks that private intermediaries have. Private intermediaries have a whole chain of networks from the destination to the source, and are able to reach out, able to gain the trust of workers, and very effectively take them overseas. Therefore, women are willing to go with private recruiters even when they know that the public sector is recruiting, because the public sector agencies are limited by the legal framework, and the private recruiters can actually give them informal employment. Of course, the system in the Middle East is now opening up, and this kind of informal employment is now becoming regular, and therefore public sector agencies could step in. But there is a trust gap. There is a big gap between the public sector agencies and women, and that gap can only be bridged by very, very proactive outreach to the sending areas. The kind of outreach, because you know the private recruiters are not people who are different from the women. They are their, you know, their neighbors. They are people who live among them, who are the first line of contact. So it's not very easy for the public sector, who, you know, which is an agency or a government agency that is separated by a social distance, to reach out. Therefore, the challenge for this kind of regulation to actually reach out to women is very, very big indeed. Now, the problem is that policy has also, by taking this view of, you know, prioritizing a form of protection over enabling migration and protecting their rights in the destination, policy has denied women's aspirations. And this has had certain repercussions for the labor market in the Middle East. From the 1960s and 70s, when women from India, do I have time, Neeta? Have I run out of time? No. Okay. So, from the 1960s and 70s, when women domestic workers from India were actually rated very high on the labor market in the Middle East, in fact, they were rated higher than the Philippines in the early 1970s. It was then that the Philippines, as a sending state, took off and started skilling their workers, and you know there was this whole export policy. Now, Indian women compete with the newest entrants on the labor market from African countries. They paid very poorly because they are, and the labor market rating is, in a sense, you know, it's not, dependent really on reputation, and reputation depends on the skills that you have, the kind of language skills, but also other kinds of labor market skills. And therefore what happens is that even women who work as hard, do the same tasks as Filipina women in the Middle East, are paid far less than the Filipina women because of the kind of labor market rating which the agencies subscribe to. And therefore policy has actually done great harm to women domestic workers over a period of time by restricting their mobility, by, which has raised the cost of migration, though of course now, because of the demand in the Middle East, the costs have come down. But what that has done is that it has disincentivized women from gaining skills, from looking to training and to develop skills, because anyway, they have to pay high cost and their remuneration is less. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveena. I think Praveena has, kind of really given us a lot of issues for discussion later in the discussion time. But I will now move on to the third panelist, Ajit Kolasheri. He is a Joint Secretary to Government and the Recruitment Manager at the Norca Roots. Over to Ajit.
Yeah.
Mr. Ajit Kolasheri.
Yeah. Thank you, Neeta. Thank you, Neeta, and good afternoon, one and all. Respected Secretary, PGE, panelists, officials from the MEA, POE, and dear participants. At the outset, I would like to thank the MEA and ICM for giving me an opportunity to share our experience and expertise in recruiting women domestic service workers to GCC countries. Let me start with my organization, Norca Roots. Norca Roots is a nodal agency of Government of Kerala with 18 years of tradition. We focus on the overall welfare of our non-resident Keralites with special emphasis to recruitment, rehabilitation, reintegration, and their resettlement. As a licensed state-run recruiter, we source candidates from the different categories like doctors, nurses, and paramedics, staffs to the various Middle East facilities. Our women-centric recruitment activities was initiated in 2015 by recruiting qualified and experienced nurses to various Middle East healthcare facilities in GCC, and then extended and expanded our women-centric recruitment by adding the recruitment of domestic service workers in 2017. It was going on without any interferences till the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. From 2018 onwards, the Norca has been focusing on the only one state that is in GCC, that is the Kuwait, and we are partnered with Aldure, a semi-governmental Kuwait company for recruiting women domestic service workers from Kerala. Let me explain why did we start this recruitment. In 2016, Ministry of External Affairs regulated and restricted the recruitment of DSWs to easier countries only through the state-run RAs. And secondly, the DSWs in Kerala are the most vulnerable working women sector in the society, and they come from marginalized population, and their legal, economic, and political status limit their ability to demand their rights. And we started this special recruitment as an empowerment project to this weaker section and facilitate them to migrate them through safe legal and ethical channel. And the emphasis is to protect them from the illegal agents and from their exploitations. Next, let me add some points about the challenges what we faced when we started this recruitment. At the outset of this recruitment, and we faced various difficulties in mobilizing DSWs because there were some strong beliefs among the society in Kerala, and they are in Gulf, especially in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, DSWs were poorly treated and remunerated. They ought to work continuously without adequate rest. It's like a forced labor. And they should not get any weekly off or sick leave. All these things are depend upon the goodwill of the sponsor. Physical and mental harassment, verbal abusement, and humiliation were common in the worksite. In order to break the chain of this strong belief and to get rid of their fear away, we had to mobilize and convince them. We did it through series of pre-decision orientation trainings all over the Kerala with the active support of our local bodies, especially village panchayat, municipalities, and corporations. They are who are closely connected with DSW. We visited various places across the Kerala and convened meetings to convince the target group to get rid of their fear and to boost their confidence. In 2018, we started a special skilling drive to the domestic service workers in Kerala with the approval of the NSTC. We also, in 2018, we started sector-specific PDOP exclusively for this domestic service worker under the state plan project. What I mean to say is that at the outset of the recruitment, the mobilization of the DSW was not an easy job, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Pravina. And in order to make this mobilization easy, and we offered certain benefits and advantages in association with my partner company, and introduced in our standard offer letter for the domestic service workers, which includes, we offered the recruitment, 100% free recruitment service through safe, legal, and orderly platform of NORCA rules. That means that the NORCA support will be given at each and every stage of the recruitment. We assured a basic minimum salary of rupees 25,000 per month. We structured this working time as 12 hours per day, 6 days per week, and included this provision in the offer letter. Free accommodation and food is a standard part of the agreement, and we also ensured mobile phone connectivity between our housemates with their dear ones in India. 2 years contract period and free tickets for every 2 years. 24-hour call center support both in the destination country and home country. The provision for sponsored change in case of any worksite issues. We ensured the support of women coordinators with proficiency in local language both in the destination and home country. Shall I explain some common grievances from the housemaid, what we heard during the post-deployment stage? Commonly, these are the complaints we received. Long working hours, high work volume, homesickness, these are all... Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So most of the complaints are long working hours, high work volume, homesickness, these are the common complaints. And in certain cases, we received verbal abusement, physical and mental harassment, a lack of care and support from the employer. That was a common complaint. Illness, linguistic and cultural barriers in the host country resulting in adaptational issues in the host country, lack of adequate food and proper rest or sleep. That's a common complaint. So in case of these issues and grievances, I can say that the timely intervention of our women coordinator in the destination country and the partner agency helped to redress most of the issues. In a number of cases, we immediately changed the sponsors with the support of our partner agency in Kuwait. And in certain number of cases, considering the gravity and the seriousness of the complaint, we successfully repatriated a few DSWs to homeland. In addition to our women coordinators, NORCA's in-house support system like NORCA's Global Contact Center is a 24/7 call center facility in India with international toll-free and missed call facility. And also we have an exclusive NORCA NRK women's cell set up in our office exclusively for DSWs for giving support, giving advice, support, information dissemination, and grievance redressal as a grievance redressal platform. Both these platforms played a vital and crucial roles in addressing the complaints. However, in this endeavor till this time, we have been very fortunate in getting the full support of our government, the government of Kerala, Ministry of External Affairs, especially from the PGE, the Indian mission in Kuwait. From the beginning of the project itself, we got great support from the Indian mission in Kuwait. The local media in Kerala, the local bodies in Kerala, the NGOs in Kerala like Seva, and the Protector of Immigrants in Trivandrum and Cochin. And also we got very great contribution and support from our expatriate Malayali associations in Kuwait. They also supported us in very crucial time. Let me share some of the challenges we have observed in this recruitment project. Poor migration that we observed in the project, and poor migration literacy among the DSWs was a real challenge. So premature quitting of jobs and repatriation requests on flimsy grounds created a lot of difficulty to all stakeholders. Another thing is we observed is that the prevailing sponsorship system in the GCC and unfriendly labor laws in GCC also created some issues. Cultural, linguistic, and emotional issues in the host country also creates adaptational issues among our housemates. Now, I will share you some of the valuable lessons what we learned during this endeavor. The role of local bodies and NGOs in outreach and awareness generation was very crucial. Tailor-made pre-departure orientation, exclusive, what we introduced in 2018, that is for the housemates, is very effective. Another point is that is pre-departure upskilling. We also introduced a pre-departure upskilling model in 2018. And both the platforms are very helpful. From our experience, a proper grievance redressal mechanism is a crucial for the success of the successful mitigation of the worksite issues. To sum up and reminding you some of the important points what I shared, as a state-run recruitment agency focusing on the DSW recruitment, NORCA Roots has tried to create some benchmarks and standards in the area where once the illegal recruiters roamed or enjoyed. Be the first in the field in Kerala to introduce the regular and structural recruitment of DSWs to GCC. The concept of offer letter we introduced here, which was unheard in this sector, and we introduced sponsor changing options and upskilling, sector-specific PDOPs, and the support of call centers and the grievance redressal platform, and also the support of the women coordinators in the destination country who knows and speaks the language of the housemaid. And these are all the measures what we introduced during this project. So let me finish my words, and once again thanking you one and all for giving this opportunity to share our views, experience, and expertise in DSW recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Ajit Kolasheri, for an interesting sharing of your experience.
Okay.
So, in the context of domestic workers, skill and skill development is often considered as an important intervention. We have a person from the Domestic Workers Sector Skill Council, Mr. Sharma, who will be speaking today on the skill development part. He is the department head in charge and training and assessment with the DWSSC. over to Mr. Nishant Sharma.
Thank you, Professor Pillai. Yeah, good afternoon to all of you. I would like to thank Dr. Surabhi. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah.
If you can speak a little louder, it will be better.
Sure.
You are audible, but yeah.
Thank you. So would like to thank Dr. Surabhi for inviting me for this such an important topic. So as all earlier speakers have spoken about all the top points, like major important points about domestic workers migrating to Gulf countries or the other countries, majorly for Gulf. So like in last 4 years of time, we have also seen a lot of things in international migration. So when the SSC started, and we also wanted to do something in the migration segment of these domestic workers who has been going abroad illegally to work over there. So, but we have seen that there are a lot of issues, like say, which cropped up, and we got to know the issues. So we started working with NSDC to create an international skill center for the migration domestic workers abroad. We started one center in Jharkhand, which was after a study we got to know that was a wrong choice, because the people over there, like we see that, I think, as Professor Praveena has quoted in her comments, the location which she has mentioned, all they were from majorly from the Kerala side of the people. They were migrating to different say countries of Gulf to work as a domestic worker. When we see in northern part of India, like all UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, other states of India, people, like say the ladies don't want to migrate to different countries. Say, or if somebody wants to migrate, like people from Punjab, they want to migrate, but they want to migrate to Canada and UK and US all. No for West, say Gulf countries. Similarly, in the other states also, people don't want to go to Gulf countries, because in last couple of years we've seen these news about all issues happening. There's one issue would have cropped up in country, but that has been so highlighted in the media as well, that now people are afraid of going to Gulf country as a domestic worker. Though we have started a lot of job roles, but when we started this our center in Jharkhand, we spoke to recruitment agents about that the job role. They say that in the families of Indian people living abroad, they want somebody who could work as a all-rounder domestic worker. So it's like that time there was no requirement of a elderly caretaker especially or child caretaker especially. So they need a person who can cook, clean, take care of elderly, take care of child, and all the entire thing that one person can do. And because I have seen in previous years as well. Earlier, the salaries of the people who used to go to abroad, who used to migrate to abroad as a domestic worker, they were migrating in a chance, like say they would get a higher salary over there. But now in India, if you see in all the metropolitan cities like in Delhi, Mumbai, especially Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore and all, the people working as a full-time domestic workers over here are getting salary of 15,000-16,000 easily for 24-hour job role. And even in abroad, when you talk about Gulf countries, the persons are not getting salary more than 25,000 to 30,000 rupees over there. So and they're bound there to work for 1 year or 2 years of time. So they didn't want to go. They don't want to go over there for such a small difference of salary. Plus, they know that they have to do that whole lot of tasks since morning till evening over there. That's the reason they are not preferring it. So we came up with this issues also with say other people in say our ministry and NSDC and all, and we got to find this is a problem, and that's why we need to have, like, because the recruitment agents, we need to have a clear cut requirement of the skills which are required, plus there should be laws on the time frame of the job to be done over there. Like if it's, it's just possible for somebody to take care of a 3-4 BHK house in doing cooking, cleaning, taking care of kids, and a whole lot of other activities also. So that's the Domestic Work Sector Council in last years have created more than 28 job roles now. They are from the aspirational job roles over here. We have people working as housekeeper, cook, we have say elderly caretaker, child caretaker, and people for taking care of even the PWDs also. But one trend which we have been seeing in majority of the places with the women, that they don't want to go abroad, mainly to Gulf country, or if they want to go, they need a higher salary packages. Plus the assurity that there would be some certain offices, some certain people whom they can contact if they are facing any problem over there. Because right now what happens, the recruitment agents place the person over there and leave them over there. Now that person has to deal with all the issues. If you see, if somebody is going to abroad and for say for a year and leaving after their family for so long, so they may become homesick. They may face some issues in the area where they are working. So there should be some laws which or some offices which will help these people if they are in distress. If they are facing issues, they can help them out in taking out from that home, giving some other opportunity to, because they are going there just to earn money majorly. That's the main task. So skilling again, we have seen this because now again, if you see, this pandemic has come, and now this pandemic has affected everybody's life, and but like we had an industry meeting with our industry partners a couple of days back, and they were saying now with this pandemic there would be issues with the jobs of part-time workers, but now in big cities people are more and more demanding a full-time worker, because full-time worker would stay in their home and they are ready to pay a very good 16,000-17,000. they are ready to pay easily over there with accommodation, food and all to the people. So that's the people are less likely to migrate to other countries, because we are seeing the situations in other countries right now. So this, I would say, this pattern of migrating to other areas may get hampered for some more time, and this time we should use to do some learning in our training material also, because we want to need a good good content to train the people, but for that we need to have the the requirement of the employers over there. So if we have a good requirement from a lot of recruitment agents, that the employers are wanting this sort of people to be trained in on such and such level and all, that would be good enough to make them prepare them for coming up jobs in the next financial year and all, so that a lot of people can migrate to other places also. Plus, I would very happy to hear that what Mr. Ajit has told, that the way he told how the Noka has been doing, it's a commendable task. If this thing can be replicated to other states also, so then we can see a lot of people would come up forward and take up this good jobs available in the other countries. That is my point over here. So skilling again, we are doing skilling, we are training people to take it to the international level and to level which people are asking in other countries. We would certainly need suggestions from the panelists there who know the market very well. So that's all from me. So I would be happy to take the questions, if any.
Thank you all the panelists. Thank you also for keeping time, and I didn't have to tell any of you to limit your intervention. So Surabhi, we are actually earlier than what we thought, and there has been many issues that each of the panelists has actually brought into the discussion. I also know that there are many POEs from various states who are present, and also I'm told that there are representatives from state recruitment agencies who are present. So I would request if any of the POEs wants to make any specific comment or have specific questions, can you please introduce and speak?
Yeah, I think POE Mumbai is raising his hand, so we can ask Mr. Sao to speak.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah. Namaskar. Actually, I want to raise few points with respect to one of the panelists, Professor Praveen, has already told. Basically, after the 2016, this female recruitment of skilled as well as unskilled was basically reserved for state-run recruiting agencies. But the problem is that as the name itself suggests, domestic category of workers, the requirement are sporadic, and it is not that somebody will place a requirement of 200 workers or 100 workers. So state-run recruiting agencies are basically structured to cater to a bulk requirement of a foreign employer. That will not happen practically. So until and unless foreign recruiting manpower agencies are involved, as in the case of Norca, what he has been telling, that they are recruiting for Al Durai in Kuwait. So Al Durai basically is a foreign manpower agency. They aggregate the requirement over there and then they place the requirement to Norca. But in majority of the cases, it will not happen, and the problem is that those foreign employees basically bypasses the government of India channel, and then they basically they are not able to take the welfare measures of government of India. So they do not come into our database. The issue is that the state-run recruiting agency should have a methodology to basically cater to the individual requirements. Until and unless they create that methodology, suppose a single foreign employer in Saudi Arabia wants to recruit a single domestic worker through a state-run recruiting. It's not possible in the present structure because only very few states have a state-run recruiting agencies. All over state-run recruiting agencies are roughly total 11. Only 6 or 7 are active, and they too are only catering to the bulk requirement. So as a result, what is happening that the majority of the domestic workers are not coming into our database, and either they are going through a visit visa or going through a ECNR visa. Now, like Saudi Arabia gives domestic work visa to only ECNR passport holder. Their basic requirement itself is like that. Now, once ECNR is there, a lot of issues comes into picture. Like one of the major the loopholes what they misuse is that the women above 50 years of age are ECNR category. Now, over last few years, we have seen many cases of illegal agents using this, sending old ladies, utilizing this loophole, and then they are basically going into distress. So the idea is that the state, with respect to the present requirement, state-run recruiting agencies should have some structure to cater to the domestic and single requirement. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, are there other POEs who wants to respond or make comments?
Praveena, some of them have written down also.
Yeah,
Mr. Yadav and Mr. Vivek Sharma, who is the POE Delhi and Raebareli respectively, they have made comments. Mr. Yadav, do you want to speak, or shall we take your written comments? Mr. Yadav?
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe summarize your point?
Yeah, I basically all the panelists and my colleague Mr. Sao have covered most of important points. And my point, as I had put it in the chat group, is that we should have strict enforcement of working hours for domestic workers, and they should be they should have weekly offs scrupulously. They should get every week weekly offs, and they should always have access to mobile phones. Now with the thankfully with the access of WhatsApp, you don't need to have international dialing connection to talk to your folks back home in India. And if some emergency takes place on either side, and if if the domestic worker undergoes some difficult situation at the station of her employment, and with a mobile phone with like WhatsApp facility, she can easily get in touch with her relatives or consulate or embassy officials and get her point across. So that is a very important point which I wanted to raise. Thank you.
We also have some points which have been raised by POE Delhi.
POE Delhi has just spoken. POE Raebareli. Yes.
Raebareli, yeah.
Yes. We can move to the state-run RAs. If POE Raebareli. Vivek sir, do you want to say anything? POE Raebareli.
No, thanks. I think I've submitted my points.
Okay. Okay. So we do the state-run RAs and then we can open the panel to everyone else.
Yes. So anyone from the state recruitment agencies?
Yeah.
Representatives?
Hi.
Yeah, please speak.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Overseas Manpower Company AP Limited is a state-owned recruiting agency in AP state. And with regard to female domestic workers, in 2019 and 2020, we have placed about 1,500 domestic workers. And with that experience, I have few points to make.
But it's still one.
Majority of the domestic workers, they do not have proper awareness before they go, after they go, while they come back. So awareness is the important thing. And second thing, what we have observed is the proper skilling is missing. A domestic worker from Philippines or Sri Lanka, he is getting more salary compared to an Indian domestic worker. That is a big issue because she doesn't have proper training. So this is what we have been emphasizing, and government of AP, we have started this skilling initiative free of cost. But the problem is these female domestic workers, they are not coming forward. Maybe there are some issues with them, and they believe the illegal channels and would like to go fast in a big time. We have been trying to stop it, and the only way out will be all the female domestic workers shall be mapped, whoever is willing, and without the permission from the government, they should not move. And whoever is going, what we have seen is all the domestic workers placed by me have been trained with the PDOT training, pre-departure orientation training. Yeah, 8 hours training in a day, we feel that incomplete. It is not covering all the aspects. And particularly in the corona times, the health is a bigger thing. So they should be in a position to take care of themselves. They should be in a position to take care of the health of the family where they are going to work, and maybe including these corona protocols. So my suggestion to the ministry is, to the respected Joint Secretary and PG, sir, make this PDOT program a must for every woman migrant who is leaving. And it should be a minimum 3 to 5 days. Otherwise, it will be a rush program run through. 1 day program is not enough. And there is a requirement, we need to work with the players there. And as POE Mumbai has rightly pointed out, it is a house visa, a single visa. So managing and having a feedback from that lady, and after she joins that keeping track of her will be an issue. So there should be a mechanism in India, in overseas, and we have the people in Kuwait, the embassy in Kuwait, the embassy in Muscat, they have been so cooperative to us. But in spite of that, it is a housework. We spread all over that country. So maybe we need to have a good mechanism in place so that we can access them immediately. For example, now what we are seeing is all the workers who went to Kuwait, some of them, they would like to come back. We cannot reach them. Though we can reach them, even the embassy couldn't help, because of the prevailing situations. So sometimes it will become more difficult for us to answer their family members back here because of this. Okay, anyway. So I feel that maybe they should go safe, they should go in legal way, and they should be properly trained. They should have a tested, certified copy with them that they are a certified housemaid like a nurse. They should have a copy with them, then only they should be allowed to travel. That's my suggestion. Thank you, Vananda.
Thank you. Are there other representatives from recruitment agencies, state recruitment agencies? If there are no more people from recruitment agencies, can it be open for open discussion now? The floor is, the room is open for everyone to make intervention. Please unmute your mic. If you can just put in the chat box whether you want to make a comment, then I can call out.
Can I come in? This is POE Trivandrum.
Sure. Yeah, please.
Sorry, I should have come in earlier, but I'm on a mobile phone, so it's a little wobbly. It's just that, Trivandrum, especially in this coastal belt, you have a lot of people going in as caregivers to Israel. Now, these observations were all put together in our previous presentations. But my concern is more of the illegal agents who operate to, and I think they're like more of regional dons and goons, which for ages have been operating. So one POE has come 2 years, he sent a police complaint, the police complaint probably just show him the paper and they let him operate anyway. At another instance, I have gone and visited this MSME program where, training for caregivers is being imparted by a center here. I forget the name right now. I think it is ILNFS. And it's at a much more reasonable rate, and they're being trained in Japanese and given this training and sent to Japan to work. So that whole incongruence, that in the city you have this facility, but very few people are using it. Whereas in the coastal areas, you have whole villages which are enamored by these thugs and who are being, sent to Israel and other places as caregivers. I just thought I'll just drop this because this has been troubling me and at the back of my mind. And I thought in this forum, I'll just mention that. Yeah, thank you.
For adding this dimension. So Neha from ILO has expressed that she wants to make a comment. So Neha, can you come?
Yes, thank you. Am I audible, Nita?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you. Thank you, ICM, for holding a very important discussion. Surabhi, thank you for taking the lead on this because, as Nita also said, that with International Domestic Workers Day, it's really timely to have this discussion. I'd also like to thank the panelists for making some very interesting remarks. And I'd just like to share that, drawing from the experience of the Work and Freedom Program, despite what Mr. Swami has just said, we have seen repeatedly in several sending countries that despite women doing PDOT training, they are still vulnerable to challenges and abuse in the workplace, right? So I'm trying to actually think aloud and request Ajit specifically and maybe Mr. Sharma as well, if you could come in and perhaps think along on the idea of using perhaps cleaning companies as employers in the destination. With Mr. Kolaseri, this conversation we've had before, which is that for nurses, there is a mechanism of having home nursing companies where I think nurses are being encouraged to work through because at least they're not isolated in their workplace then, right? So it might be an interesting idea to really think of enabling the protection of domestic workers' rights in the workplace, in the destination, by having a company as an intermediary, which perhaps we could support. I also wanted to ask Praveena if she could please elaborate on possible ways in which state recruitment agencies could reach out at the local level. Like you rightly said, there are pockets within this country where migration rates are very high from. So given the fact that you've done such in-depth field work in the last few years, last few decades, it would be really useful to get your perspective on what really can be done. Do we need interventions at the panchayat level? How can we really reach the target group that is vulnerable to forced work in the pretext of domestic work, and how do we enable them in this process? Thank you very much.
I think we can take one or two questions more. And then ask the panel to respond. Yeah.
Praveen, Nita, we have two more questions. One is Sita from ILO and then Mr. Jain from RSLDC who wants to make their interventions with, and then we can certainly go back to the panel again.
Okay, fine. So can we go in that order? First, Sita from ILO, you said? Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nita, and thank you, panelists. I just want to make 2 points. One, I think, which cannot be really much, which is about the 30-year age ban. Because I think it has huge policy implications and impact for the women domestic workers who are migrating. I'd like reflections from people on the panel about age ban. The second thing is actually what Pravina said, and I'd like her to elaborate a little bit more on this, which is about why, I mean, she mentioned that there was no incentive for Indian women to go for giving. I'd really like her to expand on that, because I again think that has huge policy implications in the way we are moving forward in India. Thank you. Those are just my 2 points.
Thank you. So can we have Mr. J? Mr. J?
Mr. Jain from RSLDC, would you like to come in?
Yeah, please. I'd like to come in, ma'am.
Yeah.
Actually, personally feel is because we have formulated a portal over Raj portal, where is a match of demand and supply. What we can do is either we can provide a link on eMigrate portal where all the employers are already listing their demand, people they wanted in domestic sector. So while all the state agencies get a platform where they can send the data of all the interested candidates who are willing as a domestic worker in the country. So that will be a consolidated data as well as the interest of people we can see, and it can be centrally monitored at the Government of India level, MEA level. That will be one of the input, ma'am. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay. So unless we have any more urgent questions, I will move back to the panel. But I just want to add one question regarding the skill development aspect. Because then now, since we have many agencies to skill domestic workers, has it made any difference in terms of the skill component of our workers who are going to other countries? This is a question to Nishant. Then I'll start with the first panelist, Pravina. You have got many questions, so over to you.
I'm afraid, Nita, we'll have to again move to Nishtha because we don't see Pravina. So.
Okay. Is Nishtha there? There? I thought she would have gone by now.
No, she's there.
She's there. Okay. Oh, that's good. That's really good. So, Nishtha?
Well, honestly, I think there are very compounded questions. It will be very difficult to answer them in a linear, direct, one-word way because these are complex problems. But I think the one thing that I definitely want to reiterate and speak in tune with ILO is I think the PDOT, because we've done pre-departure trainings really for a lot of women, it does make a difference, but it doesn't guarantee you your human rights. I mean, it's a very minor dent on awareness. I think the network of connecting them to local agents, to embassies in their country, for our international cooperation to figure in domestic workers is probably where a lot of the work is. Again, the onus of protecting domestic workers can't go back to the vulnerable. And that's where I think there is state responsibility, there is center responsibility, there is responsibility on agencies like us. But yes, PDOT is a part of the solution. It is not the entirety of the solution. In fact, from our experience, it's a very small speck of the solution. That too, if you have it for a considerable period of time, if you include gender modules, if you include models on human rights, maybe then. But it still doesn't protect them once they're out of the country. So essentially what we're looking at is a more solid network in helping them connect, not just demand their rights, but also when they're demanding their rights, the fact that they're not in isolation in their negotiation. And they sit in the table with an equal bargaining power, and of course it can't be just them bargaining for it. So the network outside the country, which is I think a part of a lot of our cooperation, is an important aspect. So that's the one thing that I definitely like to agree with in terms of ILO, as much as I see the value, as Mr. Swami said. The other questions I think are more observations. I'm not too sure if they're pointed questions per se, but needless to say, it's a very, very important issue, and I'm glad that ICM is taking this over, and I think there is a dire need. I think the first link that we must look at immediately is the lacunae in policy, which I don't mean that we overly legislated, But what part of the policy is working against us, like the 30-year ban, or the policy over 50? Because what you're essentially doing is you're incentivizing in some which way women over 50 who are more distressed, who are more marginalized, to actually go out. So the first study would be a very honest, if I may use that word, would be a very honest look at what is the unintended impact of that we intended, and where are we in that scheme of things. So maybe we can all honestly come together and take a review by ourselves, and if we were to, and UN Women would be very grateful to provide that support, along with, I'm sure, other UN sister agencies like ILO, to actually review the current context to say what can we do away with that will immediately bring down the unintended impact of our actions. And then we can look at the intended impact of our actions. So I would undo the negative and then positive ways to get there.
Thank you. Is Pravina back? Because she has the maximum number of
I know, but unfortunately I don't see her yet. But we can keep moving to the next panelist till she comes back.
So Sri Ajit Kolasheri, do you want to make any points? Because there have been many observations. So based on your experience, it would be good if you can give some observations on this.
Sir, one point I want to, I already explained that point, that is there is an outcome model for reaching the candidates. I already told you, I already explained that in 2018 when we started the recruitment, we faced difficulty in sourcing candidates. So we adopted a model, that's an outcome model. So we take trust of the local bodies in Kerala. We consulted and contacted the local body members. So from the village panchayats to the municipal corporations. So we contacted them, we organized pre-decision training and awareness training. So it was a great success. So that is the one model, all the agency can adopt that model. Because the state and agency, the initial phase also, we faced very difficulty in getting enough number of candidates. Another thing is the upskilling. Upskilling part, we organized an upskilling in 2018. And that model also, and the effect was, it was a confidence building. I can frankly think that it was upskilling is a confidence building measure, and also the morale boosting measure to the housemates. These are the two effective steps. So the our local body participation in the sourcing can be taken as a model, and also the upskilling of the housemates is also taking, you can take as a model. Thank you.
Nita, if I may, this is Nisha, if I can come in. I think Mr. Kolasheri made two very important points. Whenever we talk of upskilling, we usually try and measure our returns by income or by value. I think the fact that he used that, upskilling is also a morale boosting. It's also, and that becomes a very important aspect of even raising your voice and recognizing that you have a voice and you have an identity once you're out of the country. The other very important point that I'd like to reiterate the team made is we've always been focusing on pre-departure. I think the pre-decision, any model that looks at pre-decision awareness is also as important a measure as pre-departure is.
Okay, so thank you, Nisha. So over to now Mr. Nishant Sharma.
Yeah, so can I go back to the question? The question is like, say, what is the, can you just repeat the question once again, which you asked for the skilling related thing?
No, I was basically asking, since skill development is now being in for some time, what impact it had in terms of women's immigration.
Basically,
domestic workers immigration.
Yes. So we have been seeing this entire changes in the society happening right now because of the COVID pandemic. But one thing which I would like to mention, like Mr. Ajit has said, see, we have to put these women who have been employed very well in other countries as a role model to the new people to migrate. Because see, right now these people who have faced issues, challenges, like say they come in media, so they get hyped. Everybody thinks okay, everybody is bad out there. That if they have got taken a job in other countries, they will be harassed. They would be paid, or they have problems over there. But there are good cases as well. So if I say there would be 10 out of 10, there would be 2 bad cases, there would be 8 good cases also. So like the people who are working as training, right, like placing people over there, they should bring out those people who are happy there, who have come back and again went to their jobs in the same country or other country, so that it will motivate the people, the other people, to join this entire process. Secondly, they would also get to know what is the correct process to go abroad. See, right now, like say, we know these people who are, like say, known to me, known to the worker and all, they illegally take somebody outside and give them a job. But we have to advocate the right process to take a job, like as government has taken up long back. Say, if you want to go abroad, go through a government channel, go to a government agent and all, don't go through these private agents and all. So that's similarly we have to advocate this. Okay, if you want to take a job as a good domestic worker in other country, please follow this process. These are the organizations, these are agencies who are involved into it, and these are the government departments or say under a government undertaking. So they should be approached and they should be published in such a manner. Secondly, like for upskilling, which Mr. Ajit again mentioned, upskilling can also be done for the people who are coming back and taking for some stint in India and again going back to the same country or other place. Okay, they can also be upskilled. They can be again the challenge. They could be asked the challenges which they have faced over there, and based on their experiences and the knowledge which they require, they can be upskilled and trained further, so that those issues which have come up to them, whether it's a professional issue or a personal issue, can be handled very well with these workers. I would suggest that if we could try to open these things, and that would be good enough way to go ahead in this like good opportunity. We can give good opportunity to the workers who are deserving those opportunities for them and their families.
Thank you all the panelists for an interesting discussion, and also all the participants, VOEs, and all the representatives from recruitment agencies.
Yeah. I think Praveena is back, so we may give her one last chance.
Okay, she's back. Okay, fine.
Yeah, finally.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ravina, you had many questions. I don't know whether you have heard those questions, but
I can repeat a few very quickly. Like there was one asked for her to how to reach out to other pocket areas, and how can skilling be made more effective for DSW workers. So Praveena, can you just respond to some of those queries which were raised? And Mr. Sao also had made one point. Yeah. Mr. Sao, can you quickly reiterate whatever you wanted to ask her? So I think we had lost her in between.
Specifically targeted to state recruiting agents. And I have a very simple question. Suppose a single foreign employer wants to recruit a domestic worker. Now, whether there is any provision in the structure of state recruiting agent, whether they will entertain that single foreign employer. At present, our experience is not like that. They only entertain a bigger requirement to aggregated requirement. So, as a result, what is happening that the domestic requirements of single, 2 people, 1 people are not going through legal channels. So, my question is specifically targeted to NORCA and OMCAP, whether they will entertain or they are entertaining, or there is a methodology to entertain the domestic requirements. 1, 2, or employer wanting to recruit a single housemate.
Praveena,
quickly, if you can respond. And Surbi, I hope there is time, because if you have already...
Yes. We can give her one last chance to respond, and then we'll close. Yeah.
Okay.
Praveena, can you come in?
Praveena, are you there?
Yeah, she's there. I can see her connected. Praveena, hello?
She's there, but I don't think she's responding to our questions.
Praveena, can you just come in?
She may have a poor connection. Looks like.
I am afraid that is what is hampering her response.
Yeah.
Question, please. Swami.
Mr. Swami, can we just have Praveena speak and then we'll. Praveena, can you just quickly respond?
Hello.
Praveena, can you hear us? You can just.
I think she's gone. No, she's there.
Hello.
She's there, but
she's there.
Unfortunately, we can't hear her.
Okay, so I think then we can.
Yes. I mean, we have made a note to all the questions, and we'll mail them to Praveena and get the responses. So I think we can proceed then. Yeah.
So I think our session is over. Unless someone wants to, Dr. Swami, you want to make some points?
Yeah, yes, small only. To J.K. Savo, PO, POE Mumbai. Yeah, this is to clarify, sir, that we are also entertaining a single employer request also. But the condition is that either the employment contract or the visa must be signed by our embassy there in Kuwait or Muscat. Then we are entertaining such cases, and we are also doing antecedent verification of the employer through our APNRT members. So that is, thank you, sir.
Is Praveena there, Praveena? Hello, Praveena? Can you hear us? No.
I think she can hear us, but we can't hear her back. So unfortunately, there's some network. Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
So Surabhi, I think it was the discussion was very good, and I really enjoyed being in the panel. And over to you for the last closing remarks.
I would now request our JS, Shri Abba Gani Ramu, to make the closing remarks. Over to you, sir. Sir, are you there? I think we may have lost the connection there as well. Let's just wait for 30 seconds more and see if we can get JS online. Hello? I think there's some connection issues today. Many people, their audio is not audible. In that case, we come to a close of today's discussion. I thank all panelists, our moderator, Professor Pillai from CWDS, all our speakers, starting from Praveena, even though she cannot get back to us, and Mr. Satyam, who had to leave for another meeting, Mr. Kolasari from NORCA, Nishant from the Domestic Worker Sector Skill Council, all the POEs who enriched the discussions with their views, all the state-run agencies, colleagues from ILO, and everyone else who had their important feedback to share with us. We'll meet again in another 2 weeks' time on another very important topic. So thank you very much for joining us today. Have a pleasant evening. Thank you.